Chapter 23 is entitled Dialogues in Ethics, and the reason that topic is part of an introduction to Christian theology is that ethics, the word itself, comes from the notion of customs or practice, this kind of idea of what we do. The what we do is clearly a central question running from Genesis through to the Gospels and beyond in the New Testament and into the entire lived experience of Christianity. Kant once said there are three questions that haunt me. What can I know? What must I do? And what can I hope for? And this notion of what should we do goes back to this idea, which I propose as one of the core ideas of the entire scriptures and the Christian revelation is, how does the gifted individual go about choosing the good? That's the drama that affects every life, and that's why it's important towards the end of this journey in Christian theology to look at Christian theology's encounter with some of the vexed questions of the day. Now, these vary, and in the book itself, I look at notions such as war and peace, sexuality, sex and relationships, issues to do with the environment, and all of these and many others are part of, for want of better word, the contested areas of human behaviour. Questions about the beginning and end of life. How do we deal with those yet to be born? How do we deal with those on the cusp of death? These questions are the very web and weave of our national newspapers, our social media, and questions that occupy the time of politicians and people, prelates alike. These are what make us human, but our conclusions about them can differ greatly. To take an example that we might or might not want to focus on, the question of the environment has become a huge issue in the past 50, 60 years, probably since the Second World War, but only gradually. But the logic of it is quite unremitting and strong. If you're taking it from a Christian theology point of view, the scriptures themselves begin with an ecological statement, by God, no less, that all that God has created is good. And one of the interesting things that God, in that meditation, seems to be suggesting is that even the earth needs a rest from the endeavours of humanity, and humanity needs a rest from his functional endeavours. In other words, written into the Hebrew scriptures and the rooted tradition of Christianity, you have this notion that the fields, the farms, the ox, the donkey, all need time out, that creation itself needs to be respected. Now, of course, for many centuries, as far as religious people are concerned, the idea that humanity should have dominion over the creatures of the sea, the earth, etc., was the key benchmark. In other words, we are made in the image of God. We can do what the hell we like. Does that really hold water? Are we not part of a provision, a providence that is richer than us alone? Is it right that species and the biodiversity of our planet is threatened by our actions? One can make the case from Genesis that our original intended state was to be vegetarians. Really? I find that challenging. But if the veggies are right and the vegans are on the money, where does that leave the rest of us? And where does that leave us in terms of a sense of sin? You can't have a sin if you haven't got a planet to sin on. And here's the thing. It's noticeable that, for example, the first leader of the Catholic Church from a southern country, from Argentina, Pope Francis, his first document was not on the filioque clause of the creed or some aspect of doctrine, Well, it was an aspect of doctrine. It was Laudato Si, our attitude to the earth, our attitude to the environment. So to take that as an example, does Christian theology have ramifications for what we do? Yes. If it's not about what we do, then has it any relevance at all? It's just a thought experiment. But if it has impact on what one should do, whether one is a believer or not, if Christian theology has proposals in that regard, then the task of the Christian theologian is to articulate them well, but maybe more challengingly, try and live them.